If you're following along in the tutorial series, I think you should be pretty happy with this application development and all the different features that we've been able to build in. And so the next thing we're going to do is give the ability to have users log in. Obviously, with any type of enterprise application, that's going to be a requirement. So that's what we're going to do in this episode. And we're going to use a gem called Devise that handles the user authentication. So for your first step, come to the console and let's create a branch to build this on. So we'll say get checkout -b and say add Devise, and Devise is actually spelled with an SE. And so we're switched to that branch, and now let's open up our gem file. And on the very bottom, just say gem and then an apostrophe and then Devise. Hit save. Come back to the console and just type in bundle. And what that's going to do is that's going to fetch all the gems, and it's going to fetch everything we need for Devise to work. And you may also notice that I did bundle instead of bundle install. It actually functions the same way for the purposes that we use it for. So that's a shortcut for doing it. And you can see the bundle is complete. And so that's all working properly. Now, the next step that we have to do is we actually have to run a generator. And so the way you do that is say Rails generate Devise :install. And that will install Devise for us. And it's going to give a few different options that we could do. One of the main things that it's going to have us do first is go into our config directory and then go into development go to environments and then go into development. And then from there, you'll see a bunch of different lines. Some of them you'll never even have to touch. But here on the bottom, we're going to want to add 3 different lines. And these actually have to deal with handling a mailing function that we're going to talk about. We'll handle that in a later episode, but let's put it in there now. So config.action_mailer default URL options equals, and then curly braces :host. And because this is something, and then you do a hash rocket, and because this is something we're developing locally, we're going to say localhost 3000, and then end those curly brackets. And for the next line, do config.action_mailer.delivery_method equals :smtp. And config.action_mailer.perform deliveries, make sure I spelled deliveries correct, yep, equals true. And that's it. And this is, like I said, this is just handling the mailing function that we will be instituting in not too long. And so this has a few other requirements, or not even requirements, but just tips. And we've already done some of them, such as setting the root. You need to have some page and action that is the root action, and we already set ours to the welcome index page. And let's see, and then one other thing that we need to do is set up our notices and our alerts. So if you open up the app views layout application folder, so we'll go app views and then layouts application, and this Devise uses different notices that will come up, and we'll eventually style these so they look nice, but for right now we'll just make it so they work. And so right above the yield and below the nav bar will come in here, and we'll do some things like start with that brace and say class equals notice, and then put in some embedded Ruby right here. It says notice, and then we'll copy, or sorry, we have to close off the paragraph tag, and we're actually gonna call some custom ones that utilize some Bootstrap styling. They'll make this even look a lot better in a later episode. So we'll go alert, and then right here we go alert, and we can save this. Okay, and get out of that file. And then the next thing we're going to do is going to be a fun one. We're actually going to create some views automatically. And so the way we do that is type in Rails down on the console, G for generate, Devise, views, and hit return. And what that'll do is that's going to create a nice list of automated view folders and files. If we come up here and hit refresh, we'll see that we now have something called Devise, and look at all these nice directories that created for us. Confirmations, the mailer, the ability to reset passwords, registrations, sessions, and each one of these has files inside of it. Some of these will go and edit so that we can make them look a little bit better, but for right now, it's just good that they're all there. And so the Devise is not going to work yet because we now have to actually tell it what we want it to register, and we want it to register users. So to do that, just come down back to the console and type in Rails generate Devise user, and it's very important that user is capitalized. So hit return. And what that's going to do is it's actually going to create our user model. It's going to create a database migration and give us the ability to actually have users. And Devise has some preset properties for users. So if you want to actually see it, you just come down to your database directory. And then if you've been following along in the tutorial series, if you click on the migrate directory, you should see two files. One will be talking about creating invoices, which is the original scaffold we did. The next one is the Devise create user. If you open this up, you'll see everything that Devise is going to do for our user class. You can see that it'll have an email, encrypted password. A great thing that Devise does is it actually will hash the password, which means that it will make it very, very hard for hackers to get into, and it'll actually encrypt it. You as a site owner won't even be able to access it. It's the only person that will be able to is a person entering it in. So that's a really nice built-in Devise function. It also allows for the ability to recover that password and email a reset token to the user. And in addition that, it knows exactly when that user was created, and it stores that in a database. So if you want to sort your users by when they signed up, Devise builds that feature in automatically, along with a few other things, such as seeing how many times a user signed in, so a sign-in count, when they're signed in, the last time they signed in, different things like that, along with IP addresses. So there's a lot of information that they bring in by default. And if you scroll down in the migration file, you can see they have two commented out sections. One says confirmable and the other says lockable. And we're only going to use the confirmable one, so we'll leave the lockable one commented out. But this is something, say that you're creating an application that you want to be very secure, such as a banking application or something like that. This will make it so that if a user attempts a set number of logins and a set number of failed logins. So say they try to log in 3 times unsuccessfully, you can actually block them out of their account and make it more challenging to access. That's something that you see every single bank account, online banking system in the world utilizes something like that. So that's a nice thing to have built in. The one we are going to use is this confirmable. So just uncomment each of these items. And what confirmable does is when the user signs up, they're actually going to be sent an email, and they're going to need to click that email to verify that they have signed up. You can see that it has a confirmation token. You can know exactly when the user was confirmed at, and you can confirm when it was sent to and some different things like that. If you scroll down, you can also see that the system creates some indexes, which will help with improving the amount of time it takes to search through your user database. So the next thing to do is come down to the console, and it looks like Nitrous restarted on me, so I have to go back into the Enterprise Ape directory. And so the next thing we're going to do is actually just migrate the database. And in order to do that, it's pretty easy. You just go rake db:/migrate. And what that's going to do, when we created our generator, it essentially put that migration into kind of like a staging area so that we could make sure that all the parameters were right, the data types were right. It didn't actually add that to our database. And the way you can check that is by going to db and then schema. And this is the whole database schema for the site. Don't ever mess with this. I may have already said that before, but because none of your changes will be saved and it'll get very confusing. This just is a good reference point for knowing what your database looks like. You may notice that all of that user information is not there, and so we'll click out of that, we'll run this migration, and then we'll check back in that schema file here in a second. So I'm going to hit return. It's going to run the migration for us, and then you can see everything worked nice and smoothly, which is good. Click back on the schema, and look at that. Now our database contains all of these elements, which means it's working properly. So that's nice to see. And so the next thing that we're going to do is go into our models class. So if you come up to the application app and then click on models, and then click, you can see we have a new file here called user, and we want one more of these built-in calls. And so we're just going to take confirmable, take that out, give a comma, paste that in. So now it's making the confirmable function available to the user class, because that's one thing that we want to have. So we will save that. And now one thing that is pretty neat, if you want to see how the system works, bring up your terminal and type in rake routes, and now you'll see a lot of new routes that are available to us to create users, to manage users, and things like that. So if you remember, we have welcome and then we have invoices, but now you can see a whole list of new routes that we can use for users. So we can create new users, we can destroy user sessions, that's code for just signing out. You can reset the user passwords, you can do all kinds of really neat things. And so the thing that you want to do, if you remember, we created a whole mailing function, and we required that the system would be confirmable. So in order to make this work, we actually have to turn it on so that the mailing function will work properly. So we're going to use something called SendGrid, and so in order to get that working, we actually are going to hook it up through Heroku. And so the first step is to actually log out of Heroku. So we'll make sure we're logged out by just typing Heroku auth log out, hitting return. Okay, And let's see. Oh, well, I guess spelling it right would probably help. Not auto, but auth, short for authentication. Hit return. Okay, there. So local credentials have been cleared. Now type in Heroku add-ons, add SendGrid starter. And what that means is it's going to give us a starter developer type package, so it's free to use. And then just type return. Enter in all of your Heroku credentials. So it's going to work on installing that, and it looks like it worked. So to see all of your add-ons, just type in Heroku add-ons, and you should see SendGrid starter. And there you go. It's right there. So that's all in the production environment. And so we don't, that's going to make it work on Heroku. But in order to make sure that everything is authenticated properly, we need to find out what our SendGrid username and password is. And that's pretty easy. You just type in Heroku config :get, and then in all caps do SendGrid_username. And so our username is that right there. And then the next one's going to be password. Hit return. And there you go. Make sure you don't share this with anyone. And so the next thing to do is, let's pull this down and go back in the file system. And you're going to need to go into your config directory and then into initializers. And we're going to create a file in initializers, and we're going to call the filer mail.rb. So go here, and now we just have to give it some rules to go by. So we're going to type in action mailer, and this is case sensitive. So make sure that with each of these you are using the capitals and lowercase exactly how I'm doing it, or else it's not going to work. So action mailer base, which is just calling, it's a class method for action mailer called base, and we're just setting the delivery method, and we're going to set it to SMTP. Then after that, we're going to say action mailer base SMTP underscore settings, and this is, and then do equals curly brackets, and then there's going to be a host of different things we're going to give it. So we're going to say address, give it a few tabs because we want to have everything lined up, or at least I like it all lining up. Hash rocket, another tab, and then type in, and this has to go in inside of a quote. So do SMTP SendGrid.net, and then a comma. Next thing is going to be port. And for the port, we're gonna, this has to be in a string as well, and that's 587 and a comma. Make sure you're including the commas and everything's in strings, or else this will not work. Next one is authentication. It doesn't like the way I have it lined up, but it's gonna have to live with it. And do plain. This one, and make sure with plain that you're calling it exactly the same way I am. Plain in this case is not a string. And this parameter is going to be user underscore name, and give it hash rocket and start a string. And now come down to the console and highlight that username and come back up, hit paste, and make sure you get out any spaces and end the string, and then give it a comma. Come down the next name, and you're going to say password. Hash rockets, start the string, come down to the console, highlight your password, hit copy, and you don't have to highlight, you could just type it all in, but I do it just because it's helps prevent against any spelling mistakes. And there are just two more. Next one's domain. And our domain is going to be Heroku.com. That'll have to be changed once we switch to something else. And then next one's enable start TLS auto. I really thought I could get them all lined up, but that one has to go over just a little bit. And that's going to be true. And we don't put a comma after that. We go down the next line, and then we end the curly bracket. Let's line it up just so it looks good. Hit save, and now we will run it. That was a lot of stuff that we did without testing anything, so this may break, but we'll see. So come down to your console and type in Rails S, hit return. Starting up the server. Oh, and then it was an ugly error. Okay, so it looks like we have a method missing, which is undefined method default URL. Oh, there we go. Default URL option. That's not correct. And you guys, as you're watching, probably saw that that was incorrect. If you know how to set those up, that should actually be options. So come up to environments, development, and then scroll all the way down, and it should be default URL options. So hit save. Come back down to your console again, and then hit Rails S, and see if that worked. Okay, that looks like it worked. We didn't get any errors. So hit preview, port 3000. Okay, and you can ignore this bar. We'll get rid of it in one of the next episodes. And so what we want to do now is actually see if we can sign up a user. So go to up top, type in / and then user. Actually, it should be users / sign _up. And you can see it by default has a really nice little sign up page. So we can just enter in an email, a password, confirm the password, and then click sign up. We'll see if this works. And there you go. And if you look up top, you can see, remember when we place those messages? Now it says a message with a confirmation link has been sent to your email address. Please open the link to activate your account. So our notifications are also working well in addition to the actual sign up process. So to see if the email got sent, we'll go to Nitrous and come down to your server and kind of scroll up and see if in here is where you'll see if the email was actually sent. And there you go. If you scroll up, you can see right here, welcome Jordan@hudgens.com. You confirm your account email through the link below, and then it has a link right here, and if this link gets clicked, then it'll activate the account. It also has all the header information, so it has the sent mail to my email address. It has a date associated with it. It has a subject, everything that you would want right out of the box. And you can see it all worked very nice and smoothly, and that's one of the nice things about integrating SendGrid and Action Mailer. And to see if it worked, if it actually got sent to the email address, I'm going to open up my Outlook account. And there we go. So everything's working very nicely. You can see that the email's not just being sent on the server, it's actually being sent straight into your inbox. So good job if you went through this. I know this was another long one, but creating the ability to have users and also having some pretty advanced features such as emailing and doing verifications, all of that you built in a matter of about 20 minutes or so. So congratulations. Let me know if you have any questions or if you run into any bugs. I know that's a lot of code in a pretty short period of time, so leave those in the comment section and I can help walk you through them. And I'll see you in the next episode.